My son uploaded his DNA to trace his roots. He never expected to match my billionaire CEO ex-husband's entire family. Your biological father isn't dead, I said, each word feeling like glass in my throat. His name is Dominic Harlow, and we were married for 3 years. My son stared at me, shock rendering him momentarily speechless. Then, the Dominic Harlow? The guy who's always in the tech magazines? The Harlow Innovations guy. I nodded, watching my son's world reshape itself before my eyes. You lied to me my entire life. Lucas's voice hardened, the initial shock giving way to anger. You told me he was dead. I was trying to protect you, I said, reaching for his hand, which he pulled away. Dominic wasn't a good man by the end of our marriage. The power, the money, it changed him. That wasn't your choice to make. Lucas stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. He's my father. I had a right to know him, to decide for myself. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to discover that everything you believed about your family was built on a foundation of lies? What would you do if a simple DNA test suddenly connected you to one of the wealthiest, most powerful families in America? This is the story of a mother's desperate attempt to protect her child, a father who never knew he had a son, and a 16-year-old boy caught in the middle of a past he never knew existed. I'm Mr. Harrison, and today I'm sharing the remarkable story of how a birthday gift changed 3 lives forever. If you've ever faced a moment when truth and lies collided in your own life, this story will resonate deep in your soul. Give this video a like if you believe in the power of truth to overcome even the most carefully crafted deception. The manila envelope arrived on a Tuesday, unremarkable except for the stylized double helix logo in the corner that made my stomach clench the moment I saw it. I knew what it contained before my son even burst through the front door, his face alight with the particular excitement that only a 16-year-old on the verge of discovery can radiate. Mom! The results came. Lucas called, dropping his backpack in the hallway despite my countless reminders about proper storage. Can we open them now? I forced a smile, setting aside the stack of student essays I'd been grading. Of course, it's your DNA test after all. The irony of those words wasn't lost on me as I watched Lucas tear into the envelope. His DNA test, his heritage, his identity, all the secrets I'd carefully guarded for 16 years, potentially unraveled by a birthday gift from his well-meaning aunt who thought it would be fun to explore our family tree. This is so cool, Lucas murmured, spreading the papers across our kitchen table. Look at all these ethnicity percentages. I didn't know we had Eastern European ancestry. Your grandmother always mentioned a great-grandfather from Prague, I said automatically, the practiced lie sliding easily from my lips even as my eyes scanned the documents for the section I truly feared, the DNA matches. Lucas flipped to the next page, and I saw the moment everything changed. His eager expression froze, brows drawing together in confusion as he stared at a name listed under close family matches. Mom! His voice had lost its excitement, replaced by a bewilderment that made him sound suddenly younger. Who's Dominic Harlow? The room seemed to tilt slightly, the name I hadn't heard spoken aloud in 16 years hanging in the air between us. Dominic Harlow, tech visionary, billionaire CEO of Harlow Innovations, my ex-husband, Lucas's biological father, and apparently a man who had also taken a DNA test. Mom! Lucas repeated, his eyes, so like his father's, fixed on my face. It says he's likely my father or son. Since he's not my son. He trailed off, waiting for the explanation I'd hoped never to provide. I sank into a chair, 16 years of careful omissions and half-truths collapsing around me. We should talk, Lucas. There's something I need to tell you about your father. The story I'd maintained since Lucas was old enough to ask was simple. His father was a man I'd loved deeply during graduate school, who had died in a car accident before Lucas was born. A tragic story that discouraged too many questions, that explained away the absence of grandparents or extended family on his paternal side. A story Lucas had accepted with the resilience of a child who had never known any different. The truth was far more complicated. Your biological father isn't dead, I began, each word feeling like glass in my throat. His name is Dominic Harlow, and we were married for 3 years. Lucas stared at me, shock rendering him momentarily speechless. Then, the Dominic Harlow? The guy who's always in the tech magazines? The Harlow Innovations guy. I nodded, watching my son's world reshape itself before my eyes. We met when I was working on my PhD in computer science. He was building his first company, brilliant and driven and charismatic. We fell in love, got married, and for a while it was good. What happened? Lucas asked, his voice small. How do you explain the slow dissolution of a marriage to a 16-year-old? How do you describe watching the man you loved disappear into ambition and power, becoming someone you no longer recognized? We wanted different things, I said finally. Dominic was consumed by his company, by building his empire. I wanted a life that included more than just being Mrs. Harlow, the appropriate accessory at business functions. But you were pregnant with me? Lucas said, the hurt evident in his voice. Did he not want me? The question pierced my heart. He didn't know about you, I admitted. I discovered I was pregnant after I'd already filed for divorce. By then, things between us were so toxic, so broken. I made a choice to raise you on my own, away from that world. You lied to me my entire life. Lucas's voice hardened, the initial shock giving way to anger. You told me he was dead. I was trying to protect you, I said, reaching for his hand, which he pulled away. Dominic wasn't a good man by the end of our marriage. The power, the money, it changed him, and the custody battle would have been brutal. He never would have let go, not because he wanted to be a father, but because he never lost. That wasn't your choice to make. Lucas stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. He's my father. I had a right to know him, to decide for myself. Lucas, does he even know I exist? He demanded. I shook my head. No. After the divorce, I moved across the country, changed back to my maiden name. You were born here as Lucas Bennett. My son looked at me as if seeing a stranger. So I have this whole other family out there, grandparents, maybe aunts and uncles, cousins, and you kept them from me? Because you and my father couldn't work out your marriage. Each word was a deserved blow. I had made the decision I thought was right 16 years ago, fleeing the toxic environment of my marriage, protecting my unborn child from becoming a pawn in Dominic's games of control and dominance. But looking at Lucas now, I could see the cost of that decision written across his face. There's more to the story, I began, but Lucas was already gathering the DNA papers, shoving them back into the envelope. I don't want to hear it right now, he said, his voice tight with emotion. I need to think. He left the kitchen, and moments later, I heard his bedroom door close with a decisive click. I remained at the table, staring at the abandoned test results, wondering how long it would take for Dominic to notice the DNA match on his own account, for my carefully constructed world to completely unravel. If you've ever had to face the consequences of a decision you made years ago, hit that like button. And if you believe that sometimes the hardest truths are the ones we keep from those we love most, subscribe to my channel for more stories that explore the complex nature of family relationships and the secrets we keep. The answer came sooner than I expected. 2 days later, as Lucas maintained a cold distance despite my attempts to explain further, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Something made me answer rather than let it go to voicemail. Catherine Bennett? The voice was instantly familiar, despite the years smooth, authoritative, with the slight Boston accent that became more pronounced when he was angry or intense. My hand tightened around the phone. Dominic. 16 years is a long time to keep a son hidden, Catherine. His tone was controlled, but I could hear the underlying fury. Were you ever planning to tell me? Or was I supposed to discover his existence by accident when he's 30? How did you find me? I asked, though I already knew. Dominic had resources that made locating people trivial, especially once he had a name and a DNA connection. That's your response? Not an explanation or an apology, but, how did you find me? He laughed, a sound devoid of humor. You haven't changed. Neither have you, apparently. I shot back. still leading with accusations and demands. I have a son I've never met because of your choices, Dominic said, his voice hardening. A son who believes I abandoned him, who thinks I'm dead. So yes, I have some demands. I closed my eyes, leaning against the kitchen counter. Lucas only found out about you 2 days ago. I never told him you abandoned him. I told him you died before he was born because I thought it would be easier than explaining the truth. Which is what exactly? That his mother kidnapped him before birth. That his father was a controlling, manipulative man who saw people as assets to be acquired or liabilities to be neutralized. I snapped. That I was protecting him from being raised in a toxic environment where his value would be measured by how well he performed, how perfectly he fit into your vision of a legacy. Silence stretched between us, heavy with 16 years of unspoken words. I want to meet him, Dominic said finally. He's my son. I have that right. It's not that simple. It is exactly that simple, he interrupted. Either you arrange it or my lawyers will. Your choice, Catherine. The threat hung in the air, and I knew it wasn't empty. Dominic had the resources to make my life a legal nightmare, to potentially even seek retroactive custody arrangements despite Lucas being 16. Lucas is angry with me right now, I said, softening my tone. He feels betrayed. Rushing into a meeting with you might not be the best thing for him emotionally. Don't use his emotional state as a shield, Dominic said, but his voice had lost some of its edge. I'm not looking to disrupt his life or take him from you. I just want to know my son. The sincerity in his voice surprised me. The Dominic I remembered had rarely shown vulnerability or admitted to emotional needs. Let me talk to him, I conceded. This has to be his decision, Dominic. If you truly care about his well-being, you'll respect that. After a pause, he agreed. 1 week, Catherine. Then I expect to hear from you, or him, about arrangements. The call ended, and I stood motionless in the kitchen, trying to process the fact that the carefully separated halves of my life were about to collide. When Lucas came home from school that afternoon, I was waiting with 2 cups of hot chocolate, our traditional peace offering since he was small. His expression remained guarded as he sat across from me, but he accepted the mug. Your father called me today, I said without preamble. He knows about you. Lucas's eyes widened. He called you? What did he say? He wants to meet you, I replied honestly. He's angry with me for keeping you from him, but he seemed genuinely interested in knowing you. Of course he's angry, Lucas said, a hint of accusation still in his voice. You stole 16 years from both of us. The words stung, but I couldn't deny their truth. I made the decision I thought was right at the time, Lucas. The man I left was not someone I wanted raising my child. But people can change in 16 years, and regardless of my feelings about Dominic, you have the right to form your own relationship with him. Lucas studied me, suspicion giving way to cautious hope. So you're saying I can meet him? If that's what you want, I said, though the words felt like surrender. But I'd like to be there for the first meeting at least. Why? So you can control the narrative. The bitterness in his tone was new, a reflection of the trust I'd broken. Because I'm still your mother, and I still want to protect you, I said quietly. Not from knowing your father, but from being hurt if this doesn't go the way you hope. The Dominic I knew was complicated, brilliant, charismatic, but also calculating. I want to make sure he's meeting you for the right reasons. Lucas considered this, turning the mug between his hands. I looked him up online, he admitted. There's so much about his companies, his innovations, his wealth, but almost nothing about him personally. It's like he's a brand, not a person. That's fairly accurate, I said. He was always intensely private about his personal life, even before he became famous. There were some articles about his family, though, Lucas continued, about the Harlow dynasty. His father founded the original company, and his grandfather was some kind of industrial magnate. There are cousins who run other businesses, an uncle who's a senator. He looked up at me. That's my family too, isn't it? All those people. The wonder in his voice made my chest ache. In trying to protect Lucas from Dominic's influence, I had also denied him knowledge of his heritage, his extended family, the sense of belonging to something larger than our small two-person unit. Yes, I acknowledged. The Harlows are a prominent family, especially in Boston. Your grandfather, Edward Harlow, was a formidable businessman in his own right before Dominic eclipsed him. Were they good people? Lucas asked, the question so direct and earnest that it caught me off guard. I considered my answer carefully. Edward was traditional, demanding. He expected excellence from his children and wasn't particularly warm. Dominic's mother, Vivian, was kinder but distant in her own way. I only met them a handful of times, usually at formal family events where everyone was on their best behavior. And the rest of them? The cousins and everyone. I didn't know them well, I admitted. Dominic wasn't close to his extended family. There was always an undercurrent of competition between the various branches of the Harlows. Lucas absorbed this information, his expression thoughtful. I want to meet him, he said finally. And eventually the rest of them too. I want to know where I come from. I nodded, accepting the inevitable. I'll contact him tomorrow to arrange it. No, Lucas said, a new determination in his voice. I want to do it. It's my relationship to build. Looking at my son, so suddenly grown up, so clearly at a crossroads between childhood and the adult he would become, I realized I had to let go of the control I'd maintained for 16 years. Okay, I agreed. But promise me you'll be careful. Not everyone values family connections for the right reasons. Lucas's expression softened slightly, the first thaw in the frost between us. I know, Mom. I'm not naive. I just need to do this. The meeting was arranged for the following Saturday at a neutral location, an upscale restaurant with private dining rooms that Dominic selected. Lucas spent the morning alternating between nervous excitement and studied nonchalance, changing his outfit 3 times before settling on dark jeans and a button-down shirt that made him look older than his 16 years. I dressed carefully as well, armoring myself in a simple but elegant dress that reminded me I was no longer the overwhelmed young woman who had fled her marriage. I was Dr. Catherine Bennett now, tenured professor of computer science, mother of an exceptional son, a woman who had built a life on her own terms. We arrived at the restaurant 15 minutes early at my insistence. The maitre d' led us to a private room in the back, where a table was set for 3. He's not here yet, Lucas noted, a hint of disappointment in his voice. We're early, I reminded him, though I suspected Dominic's timing was deliberate. He had always understood the power dynamics of making an entrance. Sure enough, exactly at the appointed time, the door opened, and Dominic Harlow stepped into the room. 16 years had treated him well. The ambitious young entrepreneur I'd married had matured into a commanding presence. His dark hair now threaded with distinguished silver at the temples. His lean frame impeccably clothed in what I knew would be a bespoke suit. But it was his eyes I noticed first. The same striking blue-gray that looked back at me from Lucas's face every day. Those eyes fixed on our son with an intensity that made me instinctively move closer to Lucas. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Dominic broke the silence. Lucas, he said, his voice softer than I remembered it. Thank you for agreeing to meet me. Lucas stood straighter, and I saw him consciously resist the urge to fidget. Thank you for wanting to meet me, he replied with surprising poise. Dominic's gaze shifted to me, a complex mix of emotions crossing his face. Catherine, you look well. As do you, I acknowledged, determined to maintain civility for Lucas's sake. An awkward silence descended as we took our seats, the weight of 16 years of separation and secrets pressing down on the table between us. I don't know where to begin, Dominic admitted, a rare confession of uncertainty from a man known for his decisive leadership. There are so many questions I want to ask, so many things I want to know about you. Same, Lucas said, his earlier confidence faltering slightly. It's weird. Yesterday I didn't have a father, and today I have this whole other life I never knew about. You've always had a father, Dominic corrected with a pointed glance at me. You just didn't know I existed. I bit back a retort, reminding myself this wasn't about Dominic and me anymore. It was about Lucas. Maybe we could start with something simple, I suggested. Lucas is an exceptional student, particularly in mathematics and computer science. He's already taking college-level courses. A flash of pride crossed Dominic's face. Following in both our footsteps, then. Your mother was one of the most brilliant programmers I ever met, he told Lucas. She could see solutions that eluded everyone else. The unexpected compliment caught me off guard. That was a long time ago, I said, uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. Lucas has his own unique talents. Of course he does, Dominic agreed, studying our son with undisguised fascination. But genetics are powerful things. It's remarkable to see the combination of us in him. Lucas shifted in his seat, clearly both pleased and unsettled by being discussed this way. What was Mom like back then? He asked Dominic. Before everything. A ghost of a smile touched Dominic's lips. Brilliant, stubborn, completely unimpressed by wealth or status, which was refreshing in my world. His eyes met mine briefly. She was working on revolutionary algorithms for pattern recognition when we met. I tried to recruit her for my company, but she insisted on finishing her PhD first. You never told me that, Lucas said, turning to me with surprise. There's a lot I haven't told you, I admitted quietly, about that time in my life. Like the fact that your mother's work formed the foundation of Harlow Innovation's first major success, Dominic added. The Nexus platform that put us on the map was built on Catherine's research. I tensed. That's not entirely accurate, Dominic. No. His eyebrow arched in that familiar challenging way. The core architecture was directly inspired by your dissertation. I've never denied that. You never properly credited it either, I countered, then immediately regretted engaging. This old argument wasn't what Lucas needed to hear. But Lucas was leaning forward, clearly intrigued. You helped create Nexus? That's in all the tech history books. They say it revolutionized how AI systems process natural language. Your mother was always modest about her contributions, Dominic said smoothly. But yes, without her insights, Nexus might never have existed. I could see Lucas reassessing me, seeing his ordinary professor mother in a new light. It was exactly the kind of subtle manipulation Dominic had always excelled at, offering just enough truth to create the narrative he wanted. Let's focus on getting to know each other, I suggested, redirecting the conversation. Lucas, why don't you tell your father about your robotics team? The tension eased as Lucas enthusiastically described the competitive robotics program he'd been part of since middle school. Dominic listened with genuine interest, asking insightful questions that revealed his deep technical knowledge. Watching them, I couldn't deny the natural connection forming, the shared intellectual curiosity, the similar mannerisms I'd never noticed in Lucas before. As the meal progressed, I found myself increasingly peripheral to their conversation, which ranged from technology to Lucas's interest in rock climbing, from books they'd both read to Dominic's experiences building companies. It was as if they were making up for lost time, cramming years of father-son conversations into a single meal. Your grandfather will be thrilled to know about you, Dominic said as dessert was served. The Harlow name means everything to him, and the idea of another generation, especially one as promising as you, will give him tremendous satisfaction. Lucas's eyes widened. My grandfather is still alive? The articles I read weren't clear. Very much alive and still chairman emeritus of Harlow Holdings, Dominic confirmed. He's 82 and has survived 2 heart attacks, but he's as sharp and demanding as ever. Would he want to meet me? Lucas asked, a hint of vulnerability breaking through his composed facade. Without question, Dominic assured him, as would your grandmother, your great-aunt Eleanor, and various cousins once they learn of your existence. The Harlow family is complicated, Lucas, but family connections matter enormously to them. I felt a chill at the casual way Dominic was opening the door to his entire family network. That seems like a lot to process all at once, I interjected. Lucas is still adjusting to learning about you, Dominic's gaze hardened slightly. 16 years have already been lost, Catherine. I don't intend to waste more time with unnecessary delays. It's not about delay, I countered. It's about making sure Lucas isn't overwhelmed. I'm not a child, Mom, Lucas said, a hint of irritation in his voice. I can handle meeting my own family. The my own family stung, separating me from this newly discovered lineage that clearly fascinated him. Of course you can, Dominic agreed. In fact, I'd like to propose something. My parents are hosting their annual summer gathering at the family estate on Cape Cod next weekend. It would be the perfect opportunity to introduce you to everyone at once, in a relaxed setting. Next weekend, I echoed, alarmed by the accelerated timeline. That's much too soon. I think it sounds perfect, Lucas countered, excitement evident in his voice. I don't have any plans, and summer break just started. Lucas, we need to discuss this privately, I said firmly. What's to discuss? He challenged. You said this was my relationship to build. Dominic watched our exchange with calculated interest. Catherine, you're welcome to come as well, of course. I understand your concerns about Lucas meeting the family without you present. The invitation surprised me. You want me at a Harlow family gathering? Your mother could barely tolerate me when we were married. That was a long time ago, Dominic echoed my earlier words. And regardless of our past, you're Lucas's mother. Your presence would make this transition easier for him. His reasonableness was disarming, making me the obstacle if I refused. It was a familiar dynamic from our marriage. Dominic positioning himself as the rational one while I appeared emotional or difficult. I'll consider it, I said finally, unwilling to commit while feeling so off balance. Excellent. Dominic smiled, the expression transforming his face in a way that reminded me painfully of why I'd fallen for him all those years ago. In the meantime, Lucas, I'd like to get to know you better. Perhaps you could show me your robotics project tomorrow? We could have lunch afterward. Lucas looked to me, seeking permission despite his earlier assertions of independence. If that's what you want, I said, recognizing I couldn't stand in the way of this relationship without damaging my own connection with my son. As the meeting concluded, Dominic shook Lucas's hand, then pulled him into an unexpected embrace. Over our son's shoulder, his eyes met mine, and I saw something I couldn't quite interpret. Triumph, certainly, but also something that might have been gratitude. Outside the restaurant, as we walked to our car, Lucas was quiet, processing the encounter. He's not what I expected, he finally said. What did you expect? I asked carefully. I don't know. Someone colder, I guess. More like a typical CEO. Lucas glanced at me. He seems to really want to know me. I believe he does, I admitted. Dominic always valued intelligence and potential. He sees both in you. Is that a bad thing? Lucas asked, picking up on my tone. I chose my words carefully. No, but it's important to remember that people can want relationships for complex reasons. Your father comes from a world where family connections are also business advantages, where children are expected to continue legacies. You think he only cares about me as a Harlow heir? Lucas sounded hurt. I think he's genuinely fascinated by you, I clarified. But I also think the Harlow family has expectations that might feel overwhelming once the initial excitement wears off. Lucas was silent for a moment. You really don't want me to go to this family gathering, do you? I want you to be careful, I said. The Harlows are powerful people used to getting their way. Once you enter their world, it won't be easy to step back if you need space. Maybe I don't want to step back, Lucas challenged. Maybe I want to know that side of myself. The side you kept hidden from me my whole life. The accusation hung between us as we reached the car. I unlocked it but didn't immediately get in. Lucas, I know you're angry with me, and you have every right to be. But please understand that everything I did, including the mistakes, was because I loved you and wanted to protect you. From what, though? He asked, his voice softening slightly. He doesn't seem like a monster, Mom. Dominic was never a monster, I acknowledged. He's charismatic, brilliant, and can be incredibly compelling. but he also sees the world as something to be conquered, including people. When we were married, his need for control extended to every aspect of our lives. People change, Lucas said, echoing my own words from earlier. Yes, they do, I agreed. Which is why I'm not forbidding this relationship. I'm just asking you to move forward with your eyes open. If you've ever been caught between protecting someone you love and letting them make their own choices, even risky ones, hit that like button. And if you're curious to see what happens when Lucas enters the world of the Harlow dynasty, subscribe to my channel for the next part of this extraordinary family saga. The week that followed was a whirlwind. Dominic, true to his word, spent the next day with Lucas, touring his school's robotics lab and taking him to lunch at an exclusive restaurant where they were treated like visiting royalty. He returned home with a new laptop, just a small gift. Lucas insisted when he saw my expression, and stories about Dominic's early days building computers in his parents' garage. Each day brought more contact. Texts, calls, another meeting where Dominic took Lucas to his company's research lab, introducing him as my son to wide-eyed employees. I watched with growing unease as Lucas was drawn deeper into Dominic's orbit, dazzled by the attention, the resources, the sense of belonging to something prestigious and powerful. By Thursday, the Cape Cod gathering was presented as a fait accompli. Lucas had already packed a bag, and Dominic had arranged for a private car to collect us Friday afternoon. You are coming, right? Lucas asked as I helped him select appropriate clothes for a weekend with the Harlow family. Dad said his mother is especially looking forward to meeting you again. The casual use of dad was still jarring. Yes, I'll come, I said, having realized I couldn't let Lucas face the full Harlow dynasty alone. Though I doubt Vivian Harlow is actually looking forward to seeing me. Why did they dislike you so much? Lucas asked, folding a sweater with unusual care. Was it because you weren't from their social circle? I sat on the edge of his bed. Partly. The Harlows have been marrying into the same handful of Boston families for generations. I was an outsider, scholarship student, no family connections, focused on my career rather than supporting Dominic's. That seems old-fashioned. The Harlows are old-fashioned in many ways, I said. They value tradition, legacy, appearances. By the end of our marriage, I felt like I was suffocating under the weight of their expectations. Lucas considered this. But you're different now, established, successful in your own right. Maybe they'll see you differently too. His optimism was touching, if naive. Maybe, I agreed, not wanting to dampen his enthusiasm. Just remember that I'm on your side, no matter what happens this weekend. Friday afternoon arrived with a sleek black car pulling up to our modest home. The driver, professionally courteous, loaded our bags while Lucas vibrated with barely contained excitement. The Cape Cod estate is amazing, he told me as we settled into the luxurious back seat. Dad showed me pictures. It's been in the family for 4 generations. I nodded, remembering the imposing seaside mansion where Dominic and I had spent a few uncomfortable weekends during our marriage. Harlow Point, they called it, 20 acres of prime oceanfront property with a main house that could comfortably accommodate 30 guests and staff quarters for another dozen. The 3-hour drive passed quickly with Lucas alternating between nervous chatter and scrolling through information about the Harlow family on his phone. I used the time to center myself, to remember that I was no longer the intimidated young woman who had once walked these circles. I had built my own life, earned respect in my field, raised an extraordinary son. The Harlows might have wealth and power, but they had no authority over me or Lucas. As we turned onto the private road leading to the estate, Lucas pressed his face to the window. Wow! He breathed as the main house came into view, its weathered gray shingles and white trim gleaming in the late afternoon sun. It's like something from a movie. Several luxury vehicles were already parked in the circular drive, indicating that other family members had arrived. As our car pulled up to the entrance, the massive front door opened, and Dominic emerged, flanked by an elderly couple I recognized immediately despite the years, Edward and Vivian Harlow. Deep breath, I murmured to Lucas as the driver opened our door. Remember who you are. Lucas stepped out first, standing tall as Dominic approached with a warm smile. "Welcome to Harlow Point," he said, placing a hand on Lucas's shoulder. "Your family has been waiting a very long time to meet you, even if they didn't know it." Edward Harlow stepped forward, his tall frame still imposing despite his advanced age. His piercing blue-gray eyes, the same shade as Dominic's, the same shade as Lucas's, studied my son with undisguised interest. "So," he said, his Boston Brahmin accent pronounced, "this is the boy." Lucas straightened under the scrutiny. "It's nice to meet you, sir. I'm Lucas." A hint of a smile touched Edward's stern mouth. "Lucas, a good name. Strong." His gaze shifted to me, cooling noticeably. "Catherine, this is unexpected." "For all of us, Edward," I replied evenly. Vivian Harlow moved forward then, her silver hair perfectly coiffed, her slender figure elegant in expensive casual wear. "Let's not stand out here discussing the obvious," she said with practiced social grace. "Come inside. The others are gathering for drinks before dinner." As we followed them into the house, Dominic fell into step beside me, speaking quietly. "They're in shock, but they're trying. My father hasn't stopped talking about Lucas since I told them." "When did you tell them?" I asked, surprised. "Tuesday. I wanted them prepared." He glanced at me. "I didn't mention our disagreement about Lucas's upbringing. That's between us." The unexpected discretion caught me off guard. The Dominic I remembered would have used my deception to position himself favorably with his parents. Perhaps he had changed in some ways. The interior of Harlow Point was exactly as I remembered, tastefully opulent, with antiques that had been in the family for generations, original artwork on the walls, and views of the Atlantic Ocean from nearly every window. Lucas's eyes widened as we moved through the grand entrance hall into a spacious living room where about a dozen people were gathered. Conversations paused as we entered, all eyes turning to Lucas. I recognized some faces from my brief time as a Harlow, Dominic's younger sister Alexandra, now in her 40s, his uncle Senator James Harlow, a few cousins whose names escaped me. There were new faces too, spouses, and perhaps the next generation of Harlows. "Everyone," Dominic announced, his hand returning to Lucas's shoulder, "I'd like you to meet my son Lucas." The room erupted in exclamations and movement as family members surged forward. Alexandra reached us first, her resemblance to Dominic striking. "My nephew," she said, embracing Lucas without hesitation. "I'm your Aunt Alex. My God, you look just like Dominic did at your age." Lucas returned her hug awkwardly, clearly overwhelmed by the enthusiastic reception. "It's nice to meet you. And Catherine," Alexandra turned to me with genuine warmth that surprised me. "It's been too long. You look wonderful." "Thank you, Alex. So do you." The introductions continued in a blur, Senator Harlow with his political handshake and practiced smile, cousins Michael and Thomas, who ran different divisions of Harlow Holdings, their wives and teenage children, who immediately invited Lucas to join them by the pool later. Dominic's great-aunt Eleanor, the family matriarch at 92, who examined Lucas through narrowed eyes before declaring, "He has the Harlow intellect. I can see it." Through it all, I watched Lucas carefully, concerned he might be overwhelmed. But he handled himself with remarkable poise, answering questions about school and his interests, accepting compliments about his resemblance to the Harlow line, gradually relaxing as the initial scrutiny gave way to more natural conversation. "They're not as scary as you made them sound," he whispered to me during a brief moment alone. "First impressions can be deceiving," I cautioned. "They're on their best behavior." "Or maybe they're just happy to meet me," he countered. Before I could respond, Vivian approached. "Catherine, you and Lucas are in the East Wing. I've put you in the blue suite. I recall you admired it once." Her tone was polite but distant. "Dinner is at 7. Casual but proper." I nodded, understanding the Harlow code. Casual but proper meant no jeans or t-shirts, despite this being a weekend at a beach house. Some things never changed. As a staff member led us to our rooms, Lucas whispered, "What's the blue suite?" "It's one of the nicest guest suites," I explained. It has a sitting room between 2 bedrooms and a private balcony overlooking the ocean. Vivian putting us there is a good sign, I think. Our rooms were indeed lovely, decorated in shades of blue and cream, with antique furniture and fresh flowers. Lucas explored with undisguised awe, especially when he discovered the balcony with its panoramic ocean view. "This is incredible," he said, leaning against the railing. "Have they always lived like this?" "The Harlows have been wealthy for generations," I said, joining him. "This house has been in the family since the 1920s. "And you gave this up," he said, not accusingly but wonderingly. "All of this." "I gave up a marriage that was making me unhappy," I corrected gently. "The lifestyle was just packaging." Lucas considered this, watching the waves crash against the rocky shoreline below. "I get why you left him," he said finally. "But I still don't understand why you didn't tell him about me." I sighed, knowing I owed him the complete truth. When I discovered I was pregnant, I was already living in Seattle, rebuilding my life. I knew if I told Dominic, he would use every resource at his disposal to bring me back to Boston, to control how you were raised. I paused, choosing my words carefully. The Dominic I knew then saw children as extensions of himself, as vessels for his ambitions and the Harlow legacy. "I wanted you to have the freedom to become your own person." "But what if he would have been a good father?" Lucas pressed. "What if he would have loved me for me?" "That's the question I've asked myself for 16 years, I admitted. "And I don't have a perfect answer. I made the best decision I could with what I knew then." Lucas was quiet for a long moment. "I think I understand," he said finally. "I don't agree with what you did, but I understand why you did it. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start." I squeezed his hand, grateful for his maturity. "We should get ready for dinner," I said. "In this house, being late is considered worse than wearing the wrong thing." Dinner was served in the formal dining room, a magnificent space with floor-to-ceiling windows facing the ocean and a table that could seat 20. Lucas was placed between Dominic and Alexandra, while I found myself between Senator Harlow and one of the cousins' husbands. The strategic seating arrangement wasn't lost on me, keeping Lucas and me separated while surrounding him with Harlows. The conversation flowed easily, with Lucas the clear center of attention. He handled the spotlight well, answering questions about his academic interests and extracurricular activities with confidence. I noticed how Dominic subtly guided the discussion, highlighting Lucas's achievements in mathematics and computer science, his robotics competitions, his perfect SAT scores in those subjects. "He's clearly inherited the Harlow aptitude for technology," Edward commented, looking pleased. "Have you thought about college yet, boy?" "I'm considering MIT," Lucas replied. "Or Stanford." "MIT is the traditional Harlow choice," Edward said with approval. "For generations of Harlow men have attended. Though Stanford has certain advantages in the current tech landscape," Dominic added. "We should discuss options. With your abilities, any top school would be fortunate to have you." "Lucas still has 2 years of high school," I interjected. "There's plenty of time to consider college options." "It's never too early to plan for the future," Edward countered, "especially for a young man with Lucas's potential. The Harlow Foundation could certainly assist with connections." "That's very generous," I said carefully. "But Lucas will earn his own acceptances based on merit." "Of course," Vivian said smoothly, "but there's no harm in using the resources available to him. That's what family is for, after all." The subtle emphasis on family wasn't lost on me. The message was clear. Lucas was a Harlow, and the Harlows took care of their own, whether I liked it or not. After dinner, the group moved to the terrace for coffee and dessert. I watched as Lucas was drawn into conversation with his cousins, teenagers who seemed genuinely interested in getting to know him. They were showing him something on their phones, all laughing together, and for a moment, I felt a pang of guilt. Had my decision deprived him of these relationships, this sense of belonging to something larger than our small family unit? "He fits in well," Dominic said, appearing beside me with 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to me, "Black with 1 sugar, if your preferences haven't changed." "They haven't," I said, surprised he remembered. And yes, he does fit in. He's always been good with people. Another trait he gets from you, Dominic said, his tone surprisingly genuine. I was always more comfortable with code than humans. I smiled despite myself. That's true. I remember having to rescue you from more than one awkward conversation at industry events. A comfortable silence fell between us as we watched Lucas. It was strange how easily we had slipped back into this familiar dynamic. Standing together, observing, sharing quiet observations. For a moment, I could almost forget the years of separation, the lies, the anger. Why did you really invite me here, Dominic? I asked finally. You could have brought Lucas alone. He considered the question, his expression thoughtful. Several reasons. Lucas wanted you here. The transition is easier with you present. And, he paused. I thought it was time the family saw the remarkable woman you've become. Professor Bennett, published author, respected in your field. You've been researching me, I observed. Of course I have, he acknowledged without apology. Just as I'm sure you've researched me. Couldn't deny it. I'd followed his career through news articles and industry publications, tracking Harlow Innovations' rise to global prominence under his leadership. You've done well, I conceded. The company has exceeded even your ambitious projections. In some ways, he agreed. In others. He trailed off, his gaze returning to Lucas. Success has its costs. Before I could respond, Edward Harlow approached, his expression serious. Dominic, a word in the study. Business matter. Dominic nodded. Excuse me, Catherine. As they walked away, Alexandra took Dominic's place beside me. Some things never change, she said with a wry smile. Father still thinks he runs the company. Doesn't he? I asked. As chairman emeritus? She laughed. On paper, perhaps. But Dominic has been the true power for years. She sipped her wine, studying me over the rim of her glass. You know, when Dominic told us about Lucas, I wasn't surprised that you'd kept him secret. I was surprised you left in the first place. Really? I thought everyone in the family expected our marriage to fail. Oh, Mother certainly did, Alexandra admitted. She never thought you were suitable. But I saw how you challenged Dominic, how you made him think beyond his narrow focus. After you left, he became harder, more driven, but less human somehow. I glanced toward the house, where Dominic and his father had disappeared. He seems to have done well for himself regardless. Professionally, absolutely. Personally, she shrugged. He's never remarried, barely dates. The company is his life. She nodded toward Lucas. Until now, perhaps. Her words unsettled me. I had always imagined Dominic moving on easily after our divorce, finding someone more aligned with his ambitions and the Harlow expectations. The idea that he had remained alone, that our failed marriage had affected him so deeply, added a new layer of complexity to our shared history. Lucas is a remarkable young man, Alexandra continued. You've done an exceptional job raising him. I hope you know that the family recognizes that, whatever Mother's frosty demeanor might suggest. Thank you, I said, genuinely touched by her kindness. That means a lot. The evening continued pleasantly, with Lucas gradually relaxing into the unfamiliar environment. By the time we retired to our rooms, he was visibly tired but exhilarated. They're actually pretty cool, he said as we walked down the hallway to the blue suite. Aunt Alex invited me sailing tomorrow, and Grandfather wants to show me his collection of first edition computer science books. Grandfather, I echoed, noting the quick adoption of the term. Lucas shrugged, looking slightly embarrassed. That's what the cousins call him. It felt weird to say Mr. Harlow when everyone else was saying grandfather. I nodded, understanding his desire to fit in. Just remember what I said about moving slowly. This is all very new. I know, Mom, he said with the slight exasperation of a teenager who thinks they're being unnecessarily cautioned. But they're my family. It's not like they're strangers. But they were strangers, I thought as I prepared for bed later. Strangers who shared Lucas's DNA, his eye color, perhaps certain aptitudes and interests, but strangers nonetheless. Strangers with their own agendas and expectations, their own plans for the newly discovered Harlow heir. As I drifted off to sleep, I couldn't shake the feeling that beneath the warm welcome and family bonding, currents were moving that I couldn't yet see or understand. The Harlows had embraced Lucas with open arms. But what exactly were they welcoming him into? If you've ever felt like an outsider looking in, even in familiar surroundings, give this video a like. And if you're wondering what the Harlow family really wants from Lucas, subscribe to my channel for the next part of the story, where family secrets begin to surface and Catherine discovers the true reason Dominic has brought his son into the Harlow fold. The next morning dawned clear and bright, the kind of perfect summer day that makes Cape Cod one of the most desirable vacation destinations in America. I woke early, a habit from years of academic life, and found the house still quiet. Wrapping a light sweater around my shoulders, I made my way to the kitchen, hoping to find coffee before encountering any Harlows. The kitchen was empty except for an older woman I recognized as Mrs. Collins, the housekeeper who had run Harlow Point for as long as I could remember. "Dr. Bennett," she greeted me with a warm smile. "It's lovely to see you again. Coffee? Please," I said, touched that she remembered my preference for being addressed by my professional title rather than as Mrs. Harlow, as Vivian had always insisted during my marriage. "And it's good to see you too, Mrs. Collins. Your boy is the image of Mr. Dominic at that age," she commented as she poured my coffee. "Caused quite a stir among the staff, I can tell you." "I imagine it did," I said, accepting the cup gratefully. "Is there somewhere quiet I might sit? I don't want to disturb anyone." "The morning room gets lovely light this time of day," she suggested, "and it's rarely used before breakfast." I thanked her and made my way to the small, sun-filled room at the east end of the house. As Mrs. Collins had predicted, it was empty, offering a peaceful view of the gardens and the ocean beyond. I settled into a comfortable chair, savoring the quiet moment before the day began in earnest. I had just opened my email on my phone when the door opened, and to my surprise, Edward Harlow entered. He paused when he saw me, clearly not expecting company. "Catherine," he acknowledged with a slight nod. "You're up early." "Academic habits," I explained. "I can leave if you'd prefer privacy." "No need," he said, moving to the sideboard where a carafe of coffee waited. "I've been wanting to speak with you anyway, without Dominic or the boy present." I tensed, setting my phone aside. "What about?" Edward took his time, pouring his coffee and adding a precise amount of cream before taking the chair opposite mine. At 82, he remained an imposing figure, tall, lean, with the same striking eyes that had passed to Dominic and now to Lucas. "I'll be direct," he said finally. 16 years ago, you left my son and took his heir with you. Whether you knew it at the time or not, that was a significant action with consequences for our family." "Lucas is not an heir," I said firmly. "He's a 16-year-old boy who just discovered his father's identity." Edward waved this away as if it were a semantic distinction of no importance. "He's a Harlow. That comes with certain realities, whether you acknowledge them or not." "What exactly are you saying, Edward?" He studied me over the rim of his coffee cup. "Dominic has no other children. No other prospects for children from what I can tell. Lucas represents the future of not just the Harlow name but the Harlow enterprises. Lucas may choose a completely different path for his life," I countered. "He might become a research scientist or a professor or anything else that interests him. He's not obligated to join the family business." "Of course not," Edward agreed smoothly. "But he should have the opportunity to understand his birthright, to make an informed choice. And that's all this is about? Giving Lucas information so he can make choices." Edward's expression hardened slightly. "Don't be naive, Catherine. It didn't suit you 16 years ago, and it certainly doesn't now. The boy is brilliant from what Dominic tells me. He has the Harlow mind for technology and business. With the right guidance, the right education, the right connections, he could eventually take Dominic's place." "As CEO of Harlow Innovations?" I asked, incredulous. "He's 16. He hasn't even decided where to go to college yet." These things require long-term planning, Edward said dismissively. Dominic was being groomed from a similar age. And how did that work out? I challenged. A man so consumed by his company that he has no personal life? Is that what you want for Lucas? A flash of something, regret, perhaps? Crossed Edward's face before his expression settled back into its usual impassive mask. Dominic made his choices. Lucas will make his own. But he deserves to know the possibilities before him. I leaned forward, meeting his gaze directly. Let me be very clear, Edward. I support Lucas having a relationship with his father and with all of you. But I will not allow him to be manipulated or pressured into fulfilling some dynastic plan. He gets to discover who he is and what he wants without the weight of Harlow expectations crushing him. Edward studied me for a long moment, then surprised me with a slight smile. You haven't changed either, have you? Still fighting for what you believe is right? Consequences be damned. He set his cup down. It's what Dominic needed in a partner. Pity neither of you realized it at the time. Before I could respond to this unexpected assessment, the door opened again, and Lucas appeared, already dressed for the day in khaki shorts and a polo shirt. Mom? Mrs. Collins said I might find you here. He paused, noticing Edward. Oh, good morning, grandfather. Good morning, Lucas, Edward replied, his tone warming noticeably. I was just having a pleasant chat with your mother. Are you ready for our tour of the library this morning? Yes, sir, Lucas said eagerly. Mom mentioned you have first editions of some classic computer science texts. Indeed I do, including a signed copy of Claude Shannon's A Mathematical Theory of Communication, that I think will interest you. Edward stood, his conversation with me apparently concluded. Shall we go after breakfast? I believe your grandmother is arranging a buffet on the terrace. Sounds great, Lucas agreed. He turned to me. Are you coming, Mom? I hesitated, still processing my conversation with Edward. I'll join you shortly. I want to finish my coffee first. As they left together, Lucas already asking questions about Shannon's work, I remained in the morning room, troubled by Edward's transparent agenda. The Harlows clearly saw Lucas as more than just a newly discovered family member. They saw him as the solution to their succession planning, a fresh vessel for the Harlow legacy. The question was whether Dominic shared this view. Was his interest in Lucas genuinely paternal, or was he, too, primarily concerned with grooming an heir? And how could I protect Lucas from these expectations while still allowing him to build relationships with his paternal family? I was still pondering these questions when Alexandra found me an hour later, now sitting on the terrace watching Lucas and his teenage cousins playing an impromptu game of touch football on the lawn. He's fitting in well, she observed, taking the chair beside me. The cousins have already adopted him as one of their own. They seem like good kids, I acknowledged. They are, she agreed, though they've all grown up with the Harlow name hanging over them. It's not always easy being part of this family. I glanced at her, curious about her candor. You seem to have managed it well enough. Alexandra laughed, the sound surprisingly bitter. Have I? I run the charitable foundation, sit on the boards of cultural institutions, married appropriately, produced 2 Harlow heirs. I've fulfilled every expectation except the one that matters most. I've never been Dominic. What do you mean? She sighed, watching the teenagers on the lawn. In this family, there's only room for one star, one visionary. That's always been Dominic. The rest of us orbit around him, reflecting his light. She turned to me. Father's already sizing Lucas up as the next Dominic. I saw them in the library earlier, deep in conversation about quantum computing or some such thing. The old man was practically glowing with pride. Lucas is his own person, I said firmly. Not a replacement for Dominic or anyone else. I hope you can help him hold on to that, Alexandra said seriously. It's easy to lose yourself in the Harlow expectations. I should know. Her words reinforced my earlier concerns. Before I could respond, Dominic appeared on the terrace, looking relaxed in casual weekend attire that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. There you are, he said, approaching us. "I've been looking for you, Catherine. I thought you might like to see the changes to the gardens. You always had suggestions for improvements when we visited." The invitation surprised me. "I'd like that," I said, curious about his motives. As we walked through the meticulously maintained gardens, now more beautiful than I remembered with new water features and sculpture installations, Dominic kept the conversation light, pointing out rare plant specimens and architectural elements. It was only when we reached a secluded bench overlooking the ocean that he broached more serious topics. "My father spoke to you this morning," he said. Not a question but a statement. "He did," I confirmed. "About Lucas's birthright and the Harlow legacy." Dominic sighed, running a hand through his silver-streaked hair. "I apologize for that. Father is traditional in his thinking. And you're not," I challenged. "You don't see Lucas as the solution to your succession planning?" He was quiet for a moment, his gaze on the distant horizon. "When I first discovered Lucas's existence, that was part of it," he admitted finally. "The shock, the anger at what you'd kept from me, yes, but also the immediate recognition of possibilities. A son, an heir, someone to eventually take over what I've built." At least he was being honest. "And now I've met him," Dominic said simply. "Spent time with him. He's not just a concept anymore, not just a potential successor. He's a person. Brilliant, thoughtful, with his own ideas and interests." He turned to me. "You've done an extraordinary job raising him, Catherine. He's everything I could have hoped for in a son, and nothing like what I expected." The sincerity in his voice caught me off guard. "What did you expect? Someone more like me, I suppose, driven by ambition, hungry for success and recognition. But Lucas is different. He's curious about everything, genuinely interested in people, not just what they can do for him." A rueful smile touched his lips. "He's more like you in that way." I wasn't sure how to respond to this unexpected vulnerability. "He has your focus," I offered. "When he's working on a problem, the world disappears around him. And your analytical mind." Dominic nodded, accepting this. "Nature and nurture, I suppose. He got the best of both of us." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "I want you to know that whatever my father might say, I'm not trying to force Lucas into any predetermined role. I want to know my son. If that eventually leads to him having an interest in the company, that would be gratifying. But it's not a condition of our relationship." I studied him, trying to gauge his sincerity. The Dominic I had known was a master of saying what people wanted to hear while pursuing his own agenda. But there was something different about him now, a reflectiveness that hadn't been there before, a hint of hard-earned wisdom. "I want to believe you," I said honestly. "But you're not sure you can," he finished for me. "I understand that. I haven't earned your trust. But I'm hoping, for Lucas's sake, we can find a way forward that puts his needs first." "That's all I've ever wanted," I said quietly. Dominic nodded, then stood. "We should get back. Alexandra is taking Lucas and the cousins sailing this afternoon. You're welcome to join them, of course." "I think I'll let Lucas have that experience on his own," I decided. "It's good for him to build relationships with them independently." "Wise as always," Dominic said with a small smile. "Some things don't change." As we walked back toward the house, I found myself in the strange position of cautiously reassessing Dominic. Was it possible that 16 years had genuinely changed him? That fatherhood, even this delayed version of it, was bringing out a different side of him? Or was this all an elaborate performance designed to lower my guard? The afternoon passed pleasantly, with Lucas and the cousins returning from sailing full of stories and laughter. Dinner that evening was more relaxed than the previous night, with Lucas now comfortable enough to join in the family banter and even gently tease his newfound relatives. I watched him, both proud of his adaptability and concerned about how quickly he was being absorbed into the Harlow fold. After dinner, as the family gathered in the main living room, Senator James Harlow approached me, drink in hand. "Catherine," he greeted me with the practiced charm of a career politician. "I understand you're doing impressive work at the university. Artificial intelligence ethics, is it? Among other things, I confirmed, surprised he knew my research focus. Fascinating field, he said, sipping his scotch. In fact, I'm on a Senate committee that's looking at regulatory frameworks for AI development. We could use more expert voices like yours in the conversation. I raised an eyebrow. Are you offering me a consulting position, Senator? He smiled. Let's call it an exploratory conversation. The committee has funds for technical advisors. It would involve occasional trips to Washington, testimony before the committee, that sort of thing. Quite prestigious, and the compensation is appropriate. The offer was unexpected and suspiciously well-timed. That's very interesting, I said carefully, though I have to wonder why now, when my work has been published and available for years. The senator had the grace to look slightly abashed. Well, the Harlow connection certainly brought you to my attention. Family networks have their uses. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. Between us, Dominic mentioned your expertise might be valuable to the committee. He speaks very highly of your technical acumen, despite your personal history. So Dominic was behind this. But was he trying to offer me a genuine opportunity? Or was this an attempt to influence me, to make me more amenable to the Harlow plans for Lucas? I'd need to see the details, of course, I said noncommittally. My university commitments come first. Of course, the senator agreed readily. I'll have my chief of staff send over the information. Just think about it. As he moved away to join another conversation, I noticed Lucas watching me from across the room, where he sat with Dominic and Edward, clearly deep in some technical discussion. He gave me a small wave, looking happier and more animated than I'd seen him in months. Later that night, as Lucas and I retreated to our suite, he was bubbling with excitement about the day. Grandfather showed me his first edition computing books, and then Dad and I talked about quantum encryption for like an hour, he told me, pacing the sitting room energetically. Did you know Harlow Innovations is working on quantum-resistant algorithms? Dad says their approach is completely different from what other companies are doing. That sounds fascinating, I said, noting his enthusiastic use of Dad and Grandfather now, as if he'd been using the terms his whole life. And Uncle James, Senator Harlow, said I could intern in his office next summer if I wanted. In Washington, Lucas continued, and Aunt Alex wants me to come back for Thanksgiving to meet more of the family who couldn't be here this weekend. They're certainly making you feel welcome, I observed. They're amazing, Lucas said, finally dropping onto the sofa beside me. They're a little intense sometimes, and Grandmother keeps asking weird questions about my social connections. Whatever that means, but they're so interesting, and they actually care about the things I care about. I'm glad, I said, meaning it despite my reservations. You deserve to know this side of your family. Lucas's expression grew more serious. Mom, I know you're worried about their influence or whatever, but I'm not going to turn into some Harlow clone just because I'm spending time with them. I'm still me. I know that, I assured him. I just want you to take your time. Get to know them gradually. There's no rush to become part of their world all at once. But that's just it, he said, leaning forward earnestly. It already feels like my world too in some ways. Like there was this part of me that was always missing, and now I've found it. He must have seen the hurt in my eyes, because he quickly added, not that our life together wasn't enough. It's just different now. I reached out to squeeze his hand. I understand. Really. I'm happy for you, Lucas. I just want you to be careful about the expectations they might place on you. Like what? He asked, genuinely curious. I hesitated, not wanting to color his perceptions too heavily with my own concerns. The Harlows have a certain way of doing things, certain traditions and expectations. Edward in particular has very specific ideas about the family legacy and how it should continue. You mean he wants me to eventually work for Harlow Innovations? Lucas said, surprising me with his perception. Yeah, I picked up on that. He kept talking about, when you're running the company someday, like it's already decided. And how do you feel about that? I asked carefully. Lucas shrugged. It's flattering, I guess. but also weird. I mean, a week ago I didn't even know these people existed, and now they're planning my whole future. He yawned, the long day finally catching up with him. Don't worry, Mom. I'm not signing any contracts or making any promises. I'm just getting to know them. That's all I ask, I said, relieved by his awareness. Now get some sleep. We have one more day here before heading home. As Lucas retired to his bedroom, I remained in the sitting room, reflecting on the day's events. The Harlows were moving quickly, already integrating Lucas into their world, offering opportunities, making plans. Dominic seemed sincere in his desire to know his son without imposing expectations, but the rest of the family clearly saw Lucas as the next generation of the Harlow dynasty. And then there was the senator's job offer to me, a prestigious position that would enhance my career, but also potentially bind me closer to the Harlow sphere of influence. Was it a genuine opportunity or a subtle form of control? As I finally prepared for bed, I couldn't shake the feeling that despite all my caution, Lucas and I were being drawn into the Harlow orbit, our independent lives gradually being realigned around their gravitational pull. The question was whether we could maintain our own course while still embracing these new relationships, or if the Harlow influence would ultimately prove too powerful to resist. If you've ever found yourself caught between protecting your independence and embracing new opportunities that come with strings attached, hit that like button. And if you're wondering how Catherine and Lucas will navigate the complex web of Harlow family dynamics, subscribe to my channel for the final part of this extraordinary story, where long-buried secrets come to light and both mother and son must make decisions that will shape their futures forever. Sunday morning brought a change in the weather, with gray clouds rolling in from the Atlantic and a cool breeze that hinted at rain. The shift seemed fitting as we entered our final day at Harlow Point, a reminder that all perfect summer weekends must eventually end. I found Lucas already at breakfast with Dominic and Edward. The three of them huddled over what appeared to be architectural plans spread across one end of the dining table. They were so engrossed in their discussion that they barely noticed my arrival. These are the preliminary designs for the new research campus, Dominic was explaining, pointing to a section of the blueprints. We're breaking ground next spring, with completion targeted for fall 2027. The quantum computing lab will be here, Edward added, indicating another area. State-of-the-art facilities, the best researchers money can buy. Lucas studied the plans with evident fascination. And this building? He asked, pointing to a distinctive structure at the center of the campus. The Harlow Innovation Center, Dominic said, the heart of the complex. It's where our most promising projects will be developed. It's incredible, Lucas said, clearly impressed. The whole design is so forward-thinking. Perhaps you'll work there someday, Edward suggested, his tone casual but his intent obvious. Or even lead it. I cleared my throat as I approached, making my presence known. Good morning. All three looked up with varying degrees of guilt on their faces. Lucas, the most transparent, quickly straightening as if caught doing something wrong. Mom, we were just looking at the plans for Dad's new research campus. It's amazing. So I heard, I said, helping myself to coffee from the sideboard. It sounds very impressive. Catherine, Edward acknowledged with a nod. We were just having a little business discussion. Hope you don't mind. Not at all, I replied evenly. Though I'm surprised to see architectural plans at the breakfast table during a family weekend. Dominic had the grace to look slightly abashed. My fault. Lucas expressed interest in our quantum computing initiatives yesterday, and I thought he might like to see the plans for the new facilities. At 7 in the morning? I asked, raising an eyebrow. The boy was up early, Edward said dismissively. Eager minds don't waste time. Before I could respond, Vivian entered the dining room, impeccably dressed despite the early hour. There you all are. Edward, the Whitmores will be arriving at 11 for brunch. I need you to handle Richard while I entertain Christine. Edward nodded, already folding up the architectural plans. Of course, dear. I'll show Richard the new additions to the wine cellar. That should keep him occupied. The Whitmores? I asked, taking a seat at the table. Family friends, Vivian explained with practiced politeness. Richard is on the board of Harlow Holdings, and their daughter Eliza is home from her first year at Yale. I thought it would be nice for her to meet Lucas. The orchestration was so transparent I almost laughed. Not even 48 hours after discovering Lucas's existence, Vivian was already arranging potential suitable matches from the appropriate social circle. "Actually, Mrs. Harlow," I said, keeping my tone pleasant, "Lucas and I will need to leave by 10. We have a long drive back, and he has school tomorrow." Vivian's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Surely you can stay for brunch. The Whitmores are so looking forward to meeting Lucas. Richard has been particularly interested since Dominic told him about our newly discovered grandson." "I'm sorry, but we really do need to get back," I insisted. "Perhaps another time." Lucas looked between us, clearly sensing the tension. "Mom, could we stay just a little longer? I'd like to meet Dad's board members." The dad still jarred me, especially in this context. "Lucas, we discussed this. You have that physics project due tomorrow that you haven't finished." "I can work on it in the car," he countered. "Or tonight when we get home." Dominic intervened smoothly. "Your mother's right, Lucas. School comes first. There will be plenty of other opportunities to meet the Whitmores and other family associates." He turned to me. "But perhaps you could stay for a quick coffee before you leave? There's something important I'd like to discuss with both of you." The request seemed reasonable, and I was curious about what Dominic considered important enough to warrant a special conversation. "All right, coffee before we leave would be fine." Vivian looked displeased but recovered quickly. "I'll let the Whitmores know you had a prior commitment, Lucas. Such a shame. Eliza is a lovely girl, very accomplished in mathematics herself." As she swept out of the room, Lucas gave me a questioning look. Was she trying to set me up with some girl I've never met? "Welcome to the Harlow way," I said dryly. "Appropriate social connections are cultivated early." Edward chuckled, surprising me. "Your mother always did cut straight to the heart of things." "Yes, Vivian was hoping to introduce you to a suitable young lady from a good family. It's how things have always been done." "But I'm 16, Lucas protested. "And I've only known I'm a Harlow for like 5 days." "Never too early to build the right relationships," Edward said, unperturbed. "But your mother is right about school coming first. Excellence in education has always been the foundation of Harlow success." After breakfast, Lucas went to pack his things while I took a final walk along the beach, trying to process the whirlwind weekend. The Harlows had welcomed Lucas with open arms, but their welcome came with clear expectations and a roadmap for his future that had been drawn without any input from him, or me. When I returned to the house, Dominic was waiting in his private study, a handsomely appointed room with leather-bound books lining the walls and a view of the ocean. Lucas was already there, seated in one of the comfortable chairs across from Dominic's desk. "Catherine, come in," Dominic said, rising as I entered. "Can I offer you coffee? Or something stronger, perhaps?" "Coffee is fine," I said, taking the seat beside Lucas. "What's this about, Dominic?" He waited until a staff member had brought coffee and left before speaking. "I wanted to discuss Lucas's future, specifically his education." I tensed immediately. "What about it?" "Lucas is entering his junior year of high school," Dominic said, his tone reasonable and measured. "A critical time for college preparation. I'd like to offer my support in ensuring he has every possible advantage." "I appreciate that," I said cautiously, "but Lucas is doing extremely well at his current school. He's on track for valedictorian, taking all advanced placement courses." "His school is adequate," Dominic acknowledged, "but not exceptional. I've taken the liberty of looking into alternatives that might better prepare him for MIT or Stanford." Lucas sat up straighter. "What kind of alternatives?" "There are several prestigious preparatory academies that would welcome a student of your caliber," Dominic explained. "Westfield Academy in Massachusetts, for instance, has an unparalleled record of placing students in top universities. Their advanced science and mathematics programs are second to none." "In Massachusetts?" I repeated, immediately seeing where this was heading. You want Lucas to move across the country for his final 2 years of high school? It would be an adjustment, Dominic conceded, but one with significant benefits. Westfield's resources are exceptional: research facilities, connections to MIT and Harvard, internship opportunities with leading tech companies, including Harlow Innovations, and conveniently located near you, I added, unable to keep the edge from my voice. That would be an additional benefit, yes, Dominic admitted. It would allow Lucas to spend more time with me, with the family, to become more familiar with his heritage. Lucas was looking between us, clearly torn. Would I live at the school? Or with you? The academy has excellent residential facilities, Dominic said, but you would be welcome to stay with me on weekends and holidays if you preferred. This is a lot to consider, I interjected, trying to slow the conversation. Lucas has friends, activities, a life in Seattle. Of course, Dominic agreed smoothly. It's just something to think about. The application deadline for spring admission is in October, so there's time to consider the options. Spring admission? I echoed. You're suggesting he transfer in the middle of the school year? It would allow him to acclimate before senior year, Dominic explained. The most critical year for college applications. I took a deep breath, trying to maintain my composure. Dominic, I understand you want to be involved in Lucas's education, and I support that. But suggesting he uproot his entire life and move across the country seems premature, especially when we're all still adjusting to this new situation. Mom, Lucas said hesitantly, I think we should at least consider it. Westfield sounds amazing, and it would look incredible on college applications. I turned to him, surprised by his openness to the idea. Lucas, your current school has prepared dozens of students for top universities. Your academic record is stellar. You don't need to change schools to get into MIT or Stanford. But the opportunities at Westfield would be exceptional, Dominic pressed. Access to research facilities, mentorship from leading scientists, connections that could shape his entire career, and separation from his home, his friends, and his mother, I countered. All to satisfy your desire to have him closer to you and the Harlow influence. Dominic's expression hardened slightly. This isn't about Harlow influence. It's about giving Lucas every possible advantage. It's about control, I said bluntly. Just like it always was with you, Dominic. Controlling the narrative, controlling the people around you, shaping everything to fit your vision. That's unfair, Catherine, Dominic said, his voice tight. I'm trying to do what's best for our son. After knowing him for less than a week, I challenged. You don't get to swoop in after 16 years and start making major decisions about his life. Stop it, both of you, Lucas interrupted, his voice uncharacteristically sharp. I'm sitting right here. This is my life you're arguing about. We both fell silent, chastened by his justified frustration. I'm sorry, Lucas, I said after a moment. You're right. This should be your decision with input from both of us. I agree, Dominic said, visibly making an effort to moderate his tone. I shouldn't have presented this as a fait accompli. I'm still learning how to be a father, especially to a teenager. Lucas looked between us, his expression troubled. I need time to think about all this. It's a huge decision. Of course, Dominic agreed immediately. Take all the time you need. I just wanted to present the option while there's still time to apply if you decide it's something you want to pursue. I nodded, recognizing the reasonableness of this approach even as I remained suspicious of Dominic's underlying motives. We should get going soon if we want to beat the traffic back to Seattle. As we prepared to leave, the Harlow family gathered to say goodbye. There were hugs, exchanges of phone numbers and email addresses, promises to stay in touch. Edward pulled Lucas aside for a private word, while Alexandra embraced me warmly. Don't be a stranger, she said quietly. Lucas needs you to help him navigate this world. We can be overwhelming. I've noticed, I said dryly. She smiled. He's a remarkable young man. You should be very proud. I am, I assured her. Every day. Dominic walked us to the car, helping the driver load our bags. As Lucas said a final goodbye to his cousins, Dominic turned to me. "I meant what I said about not pressuring him," he said quietly. "But I do want to be part of his life, Catherine. A real part, not just occasional visits and phone calls." "I understand that," I acknowledged. "And I want that for Lucas too. But we need to move at his pace, not yours or your family's." Dominic nodded. "Fair enough." He hesitated, then added, "There's something else I've been meaning to tell you. Something I should have said years ago." I raised an eyebrow, waiting. "You were right to leave," he said simply. "Our marriage had become toxic, and I was largely to blame. I was so focused on building the company, on living up to my father's expectations, that I lost sight of what really mattered." The admission stunned me. In all our interactions since the divorce, Dominic had never once acknowledged any responsibility for our failed relationship. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. "Because I don't want to make the same mistakes with Lucas," he said. "I don't want to be the father my father was to me. Demanding, critical, never satisfied. I want to be better." And I thought, maybe acknowledging the past might help us move forward more constructively. There was a sincerity in his eyes that I hadn't seen in years, a vulnerability that the old Dominic would never have allowed himself to show. For the first time, I considered the possibility that fatherhood might truly be changing him, forcing him to confront patterns and behaviors he'd never questioned before. "Thank you for saying that," I said finally. "It means a lot." Lucas rejoined us then, and the moment passed. Final goodbyes were said, and soon we were driving away from Harlow Point, the imposing house growing smaller in the rearview mirror. For the first hour of our journey, Lucas was quiet, staring out the window at the passing landscape, clearly processing the events of the weekend. I let him have his space, responding to work emails on my phone and giving him time to gather his thoughts. Finally, he turned to me. "They're not what I expected." "The Harlows?" I asked. "In what way?" "They're more intense, more focused on the family name and legacy than I thought they would be." He hesitated. "Grandfather kept talking about my responsibilities as a Harlow, about continuing the tradition of excellence." "That sounds like Edward," I said carefully. "But Dad seems different," Lucas continued. "More balanced, I guess. He talks about the company a lot, but he also asked about my friends, my interests outside of school. He seemed to really want to know me as a person." I nodded, acknowledging this observation. Dominic was always more complex than his father, more capable of growth and change. "Do you think he's changed?" Lucas asked directly. "Since you were married to him?" I considered the question seriously. "I think he might have. 16 years is a long time and people can evolve." The Dominic I knew was brilliant and charismatic, but also controlling and obsessed with success. The man I saw this weekend seems more reflective, more aware of the costs of that single-minded focus. "He told me he regrets how things ended between you," Lucas said, "that he didn't appreciate what he had until it was gone." This surprised me. "He said that to you?" Lucas nodded. "When we were talking yesterday, he said you were the only person who ever stood up to him, who challenged him to be better, and that he didn't realize how important that was until you were gone." I didn't know how to respond to this revelation. The idea that Dominic had not only reflected on our failed marriage but had shared those reflections with Lucas was unexpected and somewhat unsettling. "What do you think about Westfield?" Lucas asked, changing the subject. Honestly, I took a deep breath, wanting to give him a thoughtful answer rather than an emotional reaction. "I think it's an excellent school that would provide amazing opportunities. I also think it would mean a major life change at a time when you're already dealing with a lot of new information and relationships." "But you don't want me to go," he pressed. "I want what's best for you," I said carefully. "And yes, selfishly, I don't want you to move across the country. But more importantly, I want you to make this decision for the right reasons, because it's what you truly want for your education and future, not because you feel pressure to please your new family or to make up for lost time with your father." Lucas nodded, absorbing this. "I don't know what I want yet. It's all happening so fast." "You don't have to decide anything right now," I assured him. "Take your time. Research the school. Think about what you really want from your high school experience. And remember that whatever you decide, I'll support you. Even if I decide to go to Westfield? He asked, watching my face carefully. The question pierced my heart, but I kept my expression steady. Even then, it would be hard for me, but your happiness and your future come first. Lucas reached over and squeezed my hand, a gesture that reminded me of the little boy he had been not so long ago. Thanks, Mom, for everything, for raising me on your own, for building a good life for us. I know I've been angry about the secrets, but I understand why you made the choices you did. Tears pricked at my eyes, but I blinked them away. Thank you for saying that. It means more than you know. The rest of our drive passed more comfortably, with Lucas sharing stories about his conversations with various Harlow relatives and his impressions of the family dynamics. By the time we arrived home, exhausted from the emotional weekend, we had reached a tentative new understanding. Lucas would explore his relationship with the Harlows at his own pace, and I would do my best to support him without letting my own complicated history with Dominic color his experience. The next few weeks brought a new normal to our lives. Lucas maintained regular contact with Dominic through texts, calls, and video chats. Packages arrived from Boston, books on quantum computing that Edward thought Lucas might enjoy, a vintage MIT sweatshirt from Alexandra, even a formal letter from Vivian inviting him to the annual Harlow Thanksgiving gathering. Dominic, true to his word, didn't pressure Lucas about Westfield, though he did send information about the school and offered to arrange a visit whenever you're ready to consider it. He also began making plans to visit Seattle monthly, scheduling his business trips to coincide with Lucas's robotics competitions and other important events. I watched these developments with cautious optimism, grateful that Dominic seemed to be respecting the boundaries we had established, while still building a meaningful relationship with his son. Lucas, for his part, was thriving under the additional attention, his initial anger about my deception gradually giving way to an understanding of the complex circumstances that had led to my decisions. It was during Dominic's second visit to Seattle, about a month after our weekend at Harlow Point, that another unexpected revelation changed our evolving family dynamic once again. Dominic had come to watch Lucas compete in a regional robotics championship. His team placed second, a significant achievement that had Lucas beaming with pride, as we all went to dinner afterward to celebrate. The evening had gone surprisingly well, with easy conversation and genuine laughter, until Lucas excused himself to the restroom, leaving Dominic and me alone at the table. He's remarkable, Dominic said, watching Lucas weave through the restaurant. Every time I see him, I'm more impressed. He is, I agreed. He always has been. Dominic was quiet for a moment, swirling the wine in his glass. I've been thinking a lot about what you said at Harlow Point about my need for control, about how it destroyed our marriage. I tensed, not expecting this turn in the conversation. Dominic, we don't need to rehash the past. I think we do, he said quietly. At least this part of it, because it affects Lucas and how we move forward as whatever we are now. Co-parents, I suppose. I nodded reluctantly, acknowledging the point. All right, what about it? You were right, he said simply. I was controlling, obsessed with building the company, with proving myself to my father, with creating the perfect life according to the Harlow blueprint. I didn't see you as a partner but as a component in that plan. The admission was so direct, so uncharacteristically self-aware, that I was momentarily speechless. What changed? I finally asked. You never acknowledged any of this during our divorce or in the years since. Dominic's expression grew distant. About 5 years after you left, I had a health scare. Nothing serious in the end, exhaustion, stress, a minor cardiac event that served as a warning. But it forced me to stop, to really look at what I'd built and what it had cost me. His eyes met mine. I had everything my father had ever wanted for me. A successful company, wealth, influence, respect in the industry, and I had no one to share it with. No one who cared about me beyond what I could do for them. I felt an unexpected pang of sympathy. I'm sorry you went through that alone. It was my own doing, he acknowledged. But it changed me, or at least started the process. I began to question the values I'd been raised with, the definition of success I'd never examined. I even started therapy, if you can believe it. A Harlow in therapy. He smiled ruefully. My father nearly had a real heart attack when he found out. I'm glad you got help, I said sincerely. It takes courage to examine yourself that way. Not as much courage as it took for you to leave, he countered. To start over with nothing, pregnant and alone, rather than stay in a situation that was destroying you. He paused. I've always wondered, if you had told me about the pregnancy, do you think things might have been different between us? The question caught me off guard. It was one I had asked myself countless times over the years, especially during the difficult early days of single parenthood. I don't know, I answered honestly. I'd like to think it might have been a wake-up call for both of us, that we might have found a way to make things work. But the truth is, we were broken beyond repair by then. And you weren't in a place to be the kind of father I wanted for my child. And now, he asked quietly, what kind of father do you think I can be to Lucas now? I considered the question carefully, looking at the man before me. Still ambitious and driven, still a force of nature in the business world, but also more reflective, more aware of his own limitations and flaws. I think you can be a good one, I said finally. If you remember that Lucas is his own person, not an extension of you or a vessel for the Harlow legacy. If you value him for who he is, not what he might become or do for the family name. Dominic nodded slowly. That's what I want. To know him, to support him, to be there for him in ways my father never was for me. He hesitated, then added, and I want us to find a way to co-parent effectively, despite our history. For Lucas's sake. I want that too, I agreed. It won't always be easy, but I think we're off to a decent start. Lucas returned then, sliding back into his seat with a curious glance between us. What are you guys talking about? You both look so serious. Just discussing how proud we are of you, Dominic said smoothly, and making plans for my next visit. I was thinking I might stay a bit longer next time, perhaps a week instead of a weekend, if that's all right with both of you. Lucas looked to me, clearly wanting my approval before responding. That sounds fine, I said, appreciating that Dominic had included me in the decision. Lucas has fall break coming up in October. You could spend some real time together then. Perfect, Dominic said with a genuine smile. I'll clear my schedule. As we finished our meal and parted ways for the evening, Dominic to his hotel, Lucas and I to our home, I found myself reflecting on how dramatically our lives had changed in just a few short months. The secret I had guarded for 16 years was now in the open, forcing all of us to adapt to a new reality that none of us had anticipated. The following week brought another development when Lucas approached me one evening as I was grading papers in my home office. Mom, can we talk about something important? He asked, hovering in the doorway. I set aside my work immediately. Of course. What's on your mind? He came in and sat in the chair across from my desk, his expression serious. I've been researching Westfield Academy, looking at their programs, their college placement statistics, student reviews, everything I could find. My heart sank, but I kept my expression neutral. And what do you think? It's an amazing school, he said. Their science and math programs are incredible. And they have this special research track where students work directly with professors from MIT and Harvard on real projects. That does sound exceptional, I acknowledged, preparing myself for what was coming next. But I don't want to go, Lucas continued, surprising me. At least not right now. I blinked, trying not to show my relief too obviously. May I ask why? It seems like it would offer exactly the kind of academic challenge you thrive on. Lucas was quiet for a moment, gathering his thoughts. A few reasons. First, I don't want to leave my friends and my robotics team right before senior year. We've been working together for years, and I want to finish what we started. I nodded, understanding the importance of those relationships. Second, he continued, I think it would be too much change all at once. I'm still getting used to having Dad in my life, learning about the Harlows, processing all of that. Moving across the country to a new school, living in a dorm or with Dad on weekends, it's just too much right now. His maturity and self-awareness impressed me. Those are very thoughtful reasons. And third, he said, meeting my eyes directly, I don't want to leave you. Not yet. We've always been a team, just the two of us. I'm not ready to change that so drastically. Tears pricked at my eyes, but I blinked them back. Oh, Lucas, you know I would support you no matter what you decided. I know, he said with a small smile. That's part of why I want to stay. Because you always put what I need first, even when it's hard for you. He paused. I told Dad my decision yesterday. He was disappointed but said he understood and respected my choice. How did he take it really? I asked, knowing Dominic's capacity for manipulation. Better than I expected, Lucas admitted. He said we could revisit the idea for college if I wanted, but that he agreed it might be too much change too quickly. He's still planning to visit regularly, and he invited me to spend part of winter break in Boston if I want to. I was genuinely surprised by Dominic's restraint. That sounds very reasonable. He's trying, Mom, Lucas said earnestly. I know you have your doubts, and I get why, but he really is trying to do this right. I believe you, I said, and realized I meant it. The Dominic I was seeing through Lucas's experiences was indeed different from the man I had left 16 years ago. Still driven and ambitious, still very much a Harlow, but also more reflective, more willing to consider others' needs and perspectives. So you're okay with me spending part of winter break in Boston? Lucas asked. It would just be for a week after Christmas. If that's what you want, then yes, I agreed. It would be good for you to see where your father lives, to get to know that part of your heritage better. Lucas's relief was palpable. Thanks, Mom, for everything, for being so understanding about all of this. You're handling a very complicated situation with remarkable maturity, I told him. I'm incredibly proud of you. As the months passed, we settled into a new family dynamic that none of us could have imagined before the DNA test results arrived that fateful day. Dominic became a regular presence in our lives, visiting Seattle monthly and maintaining frequent contact with Lucas between visits. He was careful to respect my role as Lucas's primary parent, consulting me on important matters and never undermining my authority. Lucas thrived under the additional attention, his initial anger about my deception giving way to a deeper understanding of the complex circumstances that had led to my decisions. He developed a genuine relationship with Dominic, neither idolizing his billionaire father nor rejecting him out of loyalty to me, but seeing him as a flawed, complex human being with both strengths and weaknesses. The Harlow family, too, remained involved from a distance, sending gifts on Lucas's birthday, calling occasionally, maintaining the connection without overwhelming him. Even Edward seemed to have accepted Lucas's decision to remain in Seattle, though he never missed an opportunity to mention MIT's exceptional computer science program whenever they spoke. As for Dominic and me, we developed a cautious friendship based on our shared love for Lucas and a growing mutual respect. The wounds of our past remained, but they no longer defined our interaction. We had both changed over the 16 years of separation, me into a confident, accomplished academic who no longer felt intimidated by the Harlow wealth and influence. Dominic into a more reflective, less controlling man who had begun to question the values that had driven him for so long. The following summer, a year after the DNA test that had changed everything, Lucas and I traveled to Boston together for a 2-week visit. We stayed not at Harlow Point but at Dominic's city apartment, a decision that symbolized the new boundaries we had all established. Lucas spent time at Harlow Innovations, shadowing his father and learning about the company without any pressure to commit to it as his future. He reconnected with his cousins, got to know his grandparents better, and even had a cordial lunch with Vivian, who had finally accepted that her grandson would make his own choices about his life path. On our last evening in Boston, as Lucas was out with his cousins, Dominic and I shared a quiet dinner on the rooftop terrace of his apartment. The city lights spread out before us like stars. Thank you, he said unexpectedly as we finished our meal. For what? I asked. For raising our son to be the remarkable young man he is, Dominic said simply. For giving him the freedom to become himself, not what someone else wanted him to be. For teaching him values that the Harlow fortune couldn't have bought him. The sincerity in his voice touched me deeply. He is remarkable, isn't he? I learn from him every day. As do I, Dominic agreed. He hesitated, then added, I've been thinking a lot about what might have been. If things had been different between us. If I had been different. That's a dangerous road, I cautioned. We can't change the past. No, he acknowledged. But we can learn from it. I've learned that control is an illusion. That the people we love aren't possessions or extensions of ourselves. That true connection requires vulnerability and respect. He met my eyes directly. All lessons I wish I had learned while we were still together. I felt a complex mix of emotions. Regret for what might have been, gratitude for the life I had built, and a new appreciation for the man Dominic had become. Perhaps everything happened as it needed to, I suggested. If we had stayed together, you might never have had that wake-up call. I might never have discovered my own strength. And Lucas might have grown up in a household with two people who didn't know how to love each other properly. Dominic considered this. A philosophical perspective. Very Catherine. He smiled, the expression softening his features. You may be right, but I still regret the pain I caused you, and the years I lost with Lucas. We can't change the past, I repeated, but we can shape the future. And I think we're doing a pretty good job of that so far. Don't you? Better than I could have hoped, he agreed. Co-parenting with you is surprisingly rewarding. You challenge me to be a better father, a better person. And you've expanded Lucas's world in ways I couldn't have alone, I acknowledged. Your influence in his life has been positive, despite my initial fears. We fell into a comfortable silence, watching the city lights twinkle against the darkening sky. It wasn't a perfect ending. Life rarely provides those, but it was a beginning of something new and unexpected. A family reconfigured by truth, shaped by forgiveness, bound together not by obligation but by choice. When Lucas returned later that evening, flushed with excitement from his night out with his cousins, he found Dominic and me still on the terrace, engaged in easy conversation about Lucas's college options. He paused in the doorway, watching us with a smile. You two look like you're actually enjoying each other's company, he observed, joining us at the table. Your mother has always been excellent company, Dominic said, when she's not calling me on my nonsense. Which is most of the time, I added dryly. Lucas laughed, the sound carrying across the night air. I never thought I'd say this, but I'm kind of glad I took that DNA test, even with all the drama it caused. So am I admitted. Though perhaps next time you decide to uncover life-altering family secrets, you could give me a little warning. Where would be the fun in that? Lucas grinned, his expression so like Dominic's that it momentarily took my breath away. As we sat together under the stars, this improbable family unit created by chance, choice, and the undeniable bonds of DNA, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here. From a single decision made 16 years ago to protect my unborn child, to this moment of unexpected harmony, life had taken us on a path none of us could have predicted. The truth, once feared and hidden, had ultimately set us all free to forge new connections, to heal old wounds, to create a family defined not by conventional structures, but by mutual respect and genuine care. It wasn't perfect, and it wouldn't always be easy, but it was real and honest in a way my marriage to Dominic had never been. Sometimes, I realized, the families we create through struggle and truth are stronger than those built on tradition and expectation. And sometimes, the secrets we keep to protect those we love must eventually come to light for healing to truly begin. If this story has touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever discovered an unexpected truth about your family? Has a simple decision like taking a DNA test ever changed the course of your life?